Hi everyone, I'm Hannah Collison from Inspired Creations, Surrey School of Sugarcraft, and today I'm going to show you how to make a stargazer, a wired stargazer in sugar. So I'm just going to share a picture of the project. I'm just going to show you how to make the one flower, and then of course you can make as many as you like. And if you'd like to work alongside, then here is the kit list. Share that, and if you've got any questions, do get in touch. My email is hannah@inspiredcreations.uk.com, or you can just have a look at the Inspired Creations website. So here we go. I'm using Squire's Kitchen sugar flour paste. I find this much more reliable for making the larger petals as it sets, so your paste shape will hold as it's drying. And here are the basic tools that you're going to be using. We've got the cutters from PME, the veiners from Squire's Kitchen, but if you haven't got that veiner, you can actually use the poppy veiner. And I'm using 26 gauge wires. We've actually got a grooved board here as well. I will show you, however, how to make a ridge in the center of each petal without a grooved board, just in case you're using a flat surface. Okay, so having taken some of the paste out of the pack, I need to make sure that this hasn't got any lumps and bumps, and I'm probably not going to use too much to start with. If I give you an idea, it's better to roll out a smaller piece of paste and get it nice and thin, rather than actually have a large piece of paste that takes ages for you to roll out, and then of course it's going to dry and you may not be able to use it again. So as a quantity, as a ball, the diameter would be no more than about 2 centimeters. So if you just store your excess paste in a pot or in a bag, just make it airtight so that it can't dry out too quickly. So we're just going to take this 2 centimeter ball of paste, give it a good warm up. So I'm kind of mashing it between my fingers and thumbs, stretching it to activate the gum. And also by mashing, I'm feeling if there's any lumps in there as well. Now it's possible you'll need a bit of corn flour, and if you have got a ridged board, pick the ridge that is actually the biggest one. But bear in mind that you're actually going to only use maybe 2 inches at the bottom. You're going to roll this piece of paste and then move it up or down so that you can keep preparing a ridge this thick in the whole of the center of the length of this paste. So this ball of paste I'm going to make into a party sausage shape. Pop it down onto my ridge, just pull that piece of fluff out. And then the first thing you want to do is actually roll it so you've got the width of the petal. So I'll just press down and roll sideways. Then you know that as you roll this paste, it's going to be the right thickness all the way up, and you haven't got to worry about that. So this is super thick at the moment. I'm going to peel it off and bring it down quite low. I'm going to deal with the top part of this paste first. So we're going to press and roll upwards. The idea is to roll it so thin that it is like phyllo pastry. And also try your best not to drop off the side here, because that part we don't want to cut. So roll nice and firm on the board until you can start to see the colour coming through, and you'll be able to tell that the middle has got a nice thick ridge in it. Then we're going to peel off. That's given us, oh, look at that, it's sticky. So I'm going to have to just re-roll that. We're going to, once we've peeled it off, we'll pull it up, and then we can carry on to roll the next part and the next part and so on, and we'll keep moving up or moving down, whichever way you want to go. This will come clear in a minute, but it's good to know that, you know, this paste sticks for me as well, especially if it's fresh or if it's a little bit humid. Today it's quite humid outside. So I've got my width, and I'm just going to roll a little bit just to establish the paste. Peel off. I'm going to put a little bit more corn flour on there just to help me, but I'm going to bring it right down because I only want to work on this part within this section of the ridge. Okay, the idea is to get a thick ridge that your 26 gauge wire will like to feed into, because 26 gauge wire is not normal for ridges. Look how bad that paste is. I'm not going to stop the video. I am going to carry on. Okay, let's try again. So I've just moved it up and roll it a little bit. Reposition it so I'm in this area here on a fresh bit of paste. Let's get some more corn flour on there. Didn't realize how sticky it was this morning. There we go, it's working now. So what I'm not doing is rolling over this section here, because that's already thick enough, although I'm probably not going to use that area because it's a little bit damaged from the sticking earlier. So peel off, push up, a bit more corn flour on there again in case you think it's going to stick. So you're relocating the ridge, but you're only going to roll this section. Don't roll this part up here. So this time it's easier for me to roll down. Again, nice and thin, peel off. Oh, there is definitely some resistance on this paste this morning. So bring it down. So each time I'm just maybe moving it up by about 1 centimetre, and I'm not rolling up this part, I'm just rolling in this area here, that section of the board. Back again. Okay, it's concentrating your rolling in that area, and you can see this is building a nice thick ridge. Of course you can't see it at the moment because I need to turn it over for you to see. So last bit now. Now I've actually rolled this paste much longer than I need, and if you feel confident you could actually get you could get double the length and actually cut 2 petals out, but don't be too worried if you haven't managed that. So you can see now, by concentrating my rolling just in this area, we've actually got the same thickness ridge all the way along the paste. And now I'm going to take my cutter shape, line it up at the base and the tip, give it a good old rub on my surface, and then pull the excess from around, cleaning off the edge before it drops out of the cutter. Now these plastic cutters, they have got like a flat edge here rather than a sharp edge, and that can cause a bit of a furry edge to your petal. So if you need to neaten it, you can use a pair of scissors or a cutting wheel to trim that off. So if you're using a cutting wheel, I just use the large end, and you just hold it just slightly tilted outwards, and that will just trim the area you need. So we're going to take the excess paste, that's going to go into a pot, and then I'm going to show you how to feed in your wire. So feeding in your wire can be quite tricky, and the best way to do this is to rest the ridge along your non-dominant hand. So I'm left-handed. I'm going to use my left hand to feed in the 26 gauge wire, which I've cut in half, and between your other hand, pinch your finger and thumb as you push the wire through. Now my finger and thumb has got a bit of pressure on it to force the wire to stay through the middle of the ridge. It's also going to be moving up the ridge as the wire tip progresses through the paste. So at the moment the wire end is there. So I'm just going to use my finger and thumb and move at the same time as the wire end is. And that way, if I feel it coming out, then I can reposition and start again or push it through. And you'll find that because it's such a long ridge that you'll get ruched up paste, so you can just even that, spread it out a little bit once you've got it all the way through. My wire has gone up to about here. It's very important that you have your wire all the way up rather than just left halfway, otherwise the petal's a little bit on the fragile side. When you turn over, you can see there is no wire showing. Once you've put your wire through, if you find that this is a little bit on the dry side, then you can always just press it between your palms and that will allow some of the warmth from your hand to melt a bit of fat that's in the paste. And then you're ready to go ahead and pop it into your veiner. The veiner itself has got raised little speckles on the sides. When you press down on those, they become indented. So this would be the reverse, sorry, the front of your petal. Okay, so the bit that's got a dip in there is the front. So we're just going to turn that over onto your veiner. You can't see it too well because it's white, and then I'm going to sandwich and press nice and firm. That's going to give us the texture. So peel back open, release, and then that reveals the texture. Now that's the front. You can tell that this is the back, this was the ridge. So as I put it into the veiner, you've got those raised little flecks. The front side, so not the bit that shows your ridge that you rolled, is going face down onto that side, and then you close it up with this one at the back. We're now ready to thin the edges, so I'm just using my foam pad, which has got a bit of resistance on there. We can thin against that. So put your shape onto there. A little bit of corn flour if you think it's going to stick, so you can just either corn flour up the tool or you can corn flour your petal. And put your bone modeling tool just with this section here along the edge of the petal, part way on the foam pad and part way on the petal itself. So in effect, you're pinching. Now, try not to hold on to the wire. You will need to move it around, especially if it's anywhere near one of these little holes, because we don't want to damage the petal. But just try and allow it to run freely rather than hold on. We're now ready to shape the petal. So this part here needs to be a little bit cupped. I like to put the bone modeling tool into the bottom of the petal here and just very gently press against it, and that creates a groove or a little U shape which is going to enable it to hold around the center, which I'm going to show you later. Then between my finger and thumb, pinch, work my way up to the top, but try not to aggravate the very end of the wire. And I want to just use my fingers to just curl those petals in a fraction. So we just got some lovely movement here. And this petal end here, I'm just going to stroke in the center and just tweak back a fraction. That could even be cupped in a little bit. I don't want to close it up. I'm not trying to pinch it, but it is nice to have a bit of a flick at the end. So that is your petal. Now what you would do, the flower itself has got 6 petals. It has 3 fat ones, which are innermost, and you've got 3 narrow ones, which go in the back, in between these petals. 6 petals in total. This narrow petal as well, you could actually use that to cut the lily leaves. So what I'm going to do now is actually set that to dry upright on a piece of oasis. If you haven't got that, you could actually hang it over a cup or a glass. If you just give it a couple of bends, and then you can hook this end into your container, and that will allow it hopefully to dangle without making contact with the surface, just so it keeps its shape, and we can straighten that back up once we're ready to assemble or once we're ready to colour. What I wanted to do also was to show you how you can create a ridge without having a grooved board. So my grooves are on the other side here, so I've just turned my board over. You can use, again, no more than about 2 centimeters of the paste. It goes a long way. If you use too much, it's just going to dry out. So maybe 2 centimeter diameter is enough for this. Make sure it's fully warmed up before you go ahead and start to roll. And then you're going to start off in a similar way. So you can roll a party sausage, but I'll probably roll it just a little bit more elongated. And then we're going to take our rolling pin and just roll evenly across. This is to start getting our width, and we'll do the same along the length as well, because we want to make sure that we've pretty much got the size of the petal. It can be a little bit smaller. Now this is still quite thick. There's no way you'd cut a petal out of this. It's far, far too thick. So what we want to do is actually make this narrower. So initially I use my rolling pin, come to about the center, balance it in the middle, and then press down firm and roll outward. So what you're doing is avoiding the center. It's okay if this part sticks. And you're going to leave the middle thicker. So I've got a thinner section here, stepped up. You can probably see the profile. It's a little bit thicker on this back side here. And then turn it around and do the same on the opposite side. So you're leaving a gap in the middle. Okay, now if you find that that's not sufficient and you need to work a little bit more, you can use just the stem of a paintbrush. Anything that you've got that's rounded will work. If you have a lot of tools, you might have something called a cell pin, which is very, very, very thin rolling pin. So here I'm just working just a little bit more just to make it slightly thinner. As I've just done there, be careful, because the more you roll over it, the more it thins out and distorts the shape. So of course now I've got to just repair that. So once you've got your shape, you can then, with your ridge in the middle, you can then line up your cutter top to bottom again. It's just about fits. Make sure your paste is not stuck to the board when you do this, because otherwise you're going to find that it will ruche up in the cutter. So this excess I can use again. I'm just going to cover that up. So I'll put it back in my pot. And while that's in the cutter, we'll take advantage and just rub around. So now, I don't know if you can see this on the video, but it's thicker here, but it's thinner on the outside. And you've got this ridge in the center, just about locate it, just about see it. So you'll be able to now put your 26 gauge wire in. So this is just a repeat of what we've just done. When you're looking at this cutter, this is the base, this is the bottom where the wire goes in, this funny little finished off section. And on the fat one, it's obviously the narrow end there. I'm going to feed that through. Again, pressure between your finger and thumb, forcing the wire to stay within the center of the ridge that you've created, right in the middle of that fat bit. So if you find that your wire goes off, then you need to stop, pull back a little bit and reposition. And as it concertinas here gathers up, you can just ease it down the wire. Try and keep your fingers quite close to the wire where the paste is, because if you're up here, it's just going to bend and go off the direction that you need. So now when I turn that round, you can't see the wire. So going back to your veiner again, this is now one of the back petals. So you're going to do 3 fat, 3 thin. A little bit of corn flour because that feels sticky. Into the recessed part here, the front. Just pop that in and then press down. To be honest, you can use this veiner the other way around as well, so it doesn't really matter. If you forget or you want it the other way, you can. Okay, so as it comes out, this is the front here. This is the back. So these are more indented. I can try and get a little view on there for you. There, you can see the texture. That's the front. That's the back. Not so much detail, more raised dinks on the back. So once you've gone through your veining, you're ready to put it onto your foam pad and thin again. Now, if you haven't got one of these tools, or you prefer, you can actually work with the large end of the ball tool. And because this is a larger surface, a bigger petal, you may find this one a little bit easier. So half on, half off. This part is the area that you're going to work on. If you hold it like a pen, again, I'm left-handed, so if you're right-handed, you want to hold it in the hand most comfortable to you. Okay, so just running the tool up and down. Be careful when you go backwards and forwards because sometimes it can pleat. This area here has got to fit around the center, which I'll be showing you in a short while. We just put the bone modeling tool, the small end of the bone modeling tool, just across that base and very carefully cup the tool, cut the paste around the tool. And you don't want to close this up though, that's the important thing here. So we're just going to curve again and just help those thinned edges to keep some of the shape. Come to the end, stroke the tip and curl over. Just be mindful that you've got a wire end in there and you don't want it to show. So we've now got a back petal. There's not a huge amount of difference between the back and the front. Here's the front one. It's just wider. So they would be set to dry, and now I'm going to show you how to make the stamens. So the center of the flower is made up of 6 stamens. Often in nature, if you have 6 petals, it will be 6 stamens. 5 petals, 5 stamens. It doesn't always follow, but for this flower it does. So we've got 6 fine stamens created, and then in the center a pistil, which I'll show you a little bit later. So the first thing I want to actually show you is how to make the T-bar as the stamen. So to make the T-bar, I need 28 gauge wires, and these have been cut into thirds, a pair of tweezers. And in here, I've got some water, a little bit of CMC, or you might know it as Tylose powder or gum tragacanth. And in here, I've got some ground semolina, semolina, or you could use ground rice, whichever you might have more use of, because obviously you don't need much. And I've just put just less than a teaspoon of the ground semolina into a pot, and I've added green, a little bit of pink, and a little bit of yellow petal dust. So those are the colors, the dry dust colors that you're going to use for coloring your piece. The first thing we do is take one of the 28 gauge wires and bend it into a T-bar. So with the tweezers, just clamp about 1 centimeter from the end, just under 1 centimeter, I would say, a little hook which runs parallel to the main stem. And then if you take we'll just close that up just a little bit, and then take your tweezers and clamp just short of halfway. The reason we don't clamp right in the middle is because you've got to width your tweezers, and when you bend, it will only bend at this end. So if you clamp right in the center, you're going to be off center. So we just clamp just short of the middle and turn the wire. So in effect, the tweezers are bending towards me. The wire is bending down again towards me. And as you turn it to the side, you'll notice that you've got a T shape. And that is called a T-bar stamen. And often that is what the stamens look like in the lily. It's nice to know that you can actually hand make these. You can buy ready-made ones. They're not exactly botanically correct, but they will certainly do if you find this bit a little bit fiddly. So bending on its side, give it a little press to close it up, and when you look at the side, you'll see that you've got a T-bar. And then the next step is to actually get just the head of this T-bar wet. So I'm just finding the head, or placing just the head into the water, give it a little spin just to get the excess water off. That's then going to go into the CMC, which in effect is what we use to make glue. So that will stick onto your water quite readily. Then you need to go back into your water, give it another spin, and into your pollen. The water on the CMC will make it become tacky, and that will enable the pollen to stick. And you're going to make 6 of those. The pistil, to make that, which is right in the middle, we need about 0.75 centimetre ball of white flour paste. It's this part here that we're going to make next, which is very unusual, but that carries the nectar and is right in the centre of the flower. So the way we do that is by taking just that piece of paste. I've got a 28 gauge wire that's been cut into 3, so it's just a third length. Give this a good warm up because we don't want it to be cracky. Roll it into a smooth ball and then a giant tic-tac shape. This is then going to be pushed against the wire. We come all the way through and out the centre on the other side. Take your fattest petal cutter, and if you just measure, so we want this wire, we want the pistil to be just over halfway. And I'm positioning my paste at the base where I want it to start. And then I can just pinch between my finger and thumb and then give it a little bit of a twiddle to secure. Now, as we're twiddling this up the wire, you can gradually release your pressure so that it becomes slightly fatter. So we're going to end up with a tapered, a very elongated cone. So just between your finger and thumb. Now, as I'm moving this, I'm just steadying with my other hand. So it is still moving round within my finger and thumb. If you try and stop it from moving, it's just going to distort the paste. I'm holding on a bit firmer now as we're coming up to the top. And I'm just edging it over the wire end. So now I've got my pistil on there. I just need to refine it a little bit. I'm just going to put my palm on top and roll. It's just a light press, but it will help just even out. So if you've got any bumps and lumps, then they will go. And then come back up to the top here. And if that little ball part here is a little bit on the large side, you can just pinch between your finger and thumb and just take that excess off. You can even reuse that part. And then this stuck out part here, we can just use our fingers to press it down, neaten it off. Then I need a pair of tweezers. So I'm using my angled tweezers again. And at the top, we need to pinch in 3, they look like ears. So I've got my tweezers almost horizontal. So 90° to the shape you've just made. And then take hold of part of your paste and just pinch. What you're trying to do is pinch in 3 ears. Last one going in. So just clamping here. And then squeeze just a little bit, not so it's going to come off. And you can see now we've got this really interesting top surface. They have a curve in them, so I can give that a little curve. Now, if you wanted to, before you curve it, just check that that hasn't gone too far, too long. If it has, then you can just use the bottom end here, if you bring it to the center of the cutter, and just press against the edge here. And that will give you a line, a mark to which you can use as your guide to pull off the excess paste. And once you've got the size right, you can then just simply use your finger and thumb to bend that over. It's only a gentle bend, gentle curve. And that's your pistil. So we've made all the components and we're ready to colour. So I've just set up ready for the colouring. And you can go very simple if you like. This requires minimal colouring. Or you can actually go go a little bit more involved, I'll just reshare the screen just to show you what I mean. So Stargazer lilies come in whites, creams, greens, pale pink, darker pink, almost burgundy colours. They're absolutely beautiful, and of course you can actually change this into a daylily, which would be oranges, kind of flame orange colour. So you can decide exactly what you would like. So I'm going to show you how to colour one of these petals and also how to do one of these petals. All the petals are coloured in the same way, and the pistil centre I will show you in a short while. So I've got a selection of colours here, just 4: lemon yellow, fuchsia pink, plum and moss green. They are powders, and I've just decanted some into my little tray here. You can use a shoot box lid, that's quite useful. Be careful because they do come out quite quickly, and you don't want to use a lot of this, just use a little bit at a time because it is quite expensive. It's better if you are a bit conservative with it and only use, you don't want to waste, you don't want to have to throw away. You could put it, if it's not been contaminated, you could put it back into the container afterwards, but I prefer to have it on a tissue because then it doesn't fly everywhere. It can be a bit static. And I also like to work on a spare tissue, which allows me to work the colour into my brush. Now, to do all this, you'll notice none of my tools are out now because ideally you're better off having a clear surface because the colour will go everywhere. It does wash off, but you don't want that to contaminate your tools because otherwise you're going to have to spend time washing those up before you create anything else. So having worked that into my brush like blusher, I'm ready now just to start to get a bit confident with my colouring. So I'm supporting at the back. You can colour whilst your petals are a little bit wet, or you can colour when they're fully dry. You want to avoid this bottom area here because I want to put some green. If I show you, this is kind of roughly what I'm trying to achieve, a pale pink colouring. Of course, you can go deeper. So I've got a flat-headed brush here and I'm holding it sideways. So I've got it, the width, the widest part is, well, it's flat down like this, isn't it? So we're just drawing a central line. Gives you a bit of confidence and a bit of a guide. And you can see that starting to show. Now, this central line that I'm drawing could actually be the blush color that you're putting on, and you can come back to the center and make it darker. But better that you get used to how much you've got on your brush or that you should be putting on your brush to start with. So now I've taken a bit more color and I'm just drawing an arc across the paste. Now this is just, again, getting me used to and supporting the back, getting me used to coloring. On these lilies, they have a white outer edge. So the color is concentrated innermost. So just remember that when you're coloring in. So I'm just doing an outline and then coming back and filling it in. It's like just like an arc. And we can take some more. And then you can do the same on the opposite side. If you find it easier to turn the petal around, so you could have it this way. The problem I have with that is I can't support the back as well. So just be very light-handed, avoiding this bottom section because you're going to put green in. If you colour in the section where you're going to add green, if you put green and pink together, you will end up with a brown shade. So of course that is going to be not as pretty to look at. And the pink I've got here, I've got 2 different shades. I've got fuchsia pink and plum. And the combination is quite nice. The fuchsia pink is quite bright and the plum is a little bit dull, but the 2 together go very well. And of course you can choose, don't have to buy the sugar flavour variety. You can actually choose shades that suit your colour scheme. So again, just working the colour in. Now you can get lens, like a camera lens puffer, and if you've got loose petal dust, then that will kind of puff it off. It's better than blowing. So I've got a little bit of loose petal dust just on the edge here, which I don't really want, but I daren't touch it with the brush. So I'll just get my lens puffer to it in a little while. So just drawing the brush just up as high as you dare. So you can see we've got this inside pale colouring. So now I'm just going to work with a little bit more of the pink on my brush, and I'm going to focus back in the centre now and start to bring out that line. It's the colouring that describes it as Stargazer, especially the part in the centre, the green, because it looks like a star when you look down on it. I always think that the speckles as well must be adding to the name when you gaze into the sky and you can see the speckled stars. So I'm thinking that might be the freckles on the petals. So just drawing over. The more you go over it, just remember to start the same point each time, and also be a little bit careful of the tip end here where the wire is, because you don't want to keep rubbing over there. It might bring the wire through, especially if your paste is dry, is wet. Okay, so now we've got a little center. It's very subtle coloring. You can go deeper if you'd like. So to get the freckles, let's just do the green first. I always usually color my petals with their color first, and then I finish off with green. Because that way you're not rubbing the green into the pink. It's better the other way around. So I've just got a mix of lemon yellow, moss green here. So I've got a limey shade. And I'm going to catch the base of the petal, again with my brush sideways. Draw that up as far as you dare. So keep starting at this bottom edge, drawing up. And what happens is that you end up giving more colour to this area and it kind of tapers off. And then I can catch just a little bit from the bottom, the outside edge. So this is actually the tip now, the outside edge inward. So I try and avoid just touching there and going out. If you go inward, you've got more control and the colour looks so much better. So just catching the tip end with the green as well. I might, while I'm here, just show you, if you were just doing an all green one, so you've just got just white with the green, which is beautiful, then all you would do is colour the green areas. You could actually bring this part, the green shoot can come up higher, shoot of colour can come up higher. And each time, start at the base and draw up so you get more colour at the base. Little by little, it needs a lot of patience, the colouring. And as before, the tip can have a little bit as well. So to do the freckles, I'm just going to move this colour. Just move that for a moment. I want to show you the pistil as well. That's got a little bit of colour, but we'll come back to that in a moment. So for the petals, I've just got a little bit of clear alcohol in here. So gin, vodka, schnapps, triple rose water if you prefer not to use alcohol. I'm going to take a little bit of the alcohol onto my brush and pick up some of the excess plum. Be careful with that because you don't want to go back into that with your dry brush. So I've got some spare here you can just maybe drop a few crumbs into your paint palette. Work that colour in, and then once you've mixed it into something that resembles slightly thicker than watercolour, you can twist your brush. So what I'm doing is twisting, just turning my brush until it comes into a point. And then before you go onto your flower, just practice just placing the tip end of the brush on a surface. And when you feel confident, I tend to support the petal at the back, got the finger sticking out here, and my little finger from my painting hand goes on because I shake. It's much easier to be able to control instead of just simply landing randomly. And then you start to paint some freckles. They're wider concentrated at the base, and then they thin out as they go up, and then they're not evenly placed. Okay, so there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's better if you avoid painting them in a line. Try and make sure as well that you haven't got too much wet paint on your brush. It's probably easier for you to reload more regularly than try and deal with saturated brush. So I've got a bit more on my brush than I did have, which is why these are coming out a little bit fatter and a bit wider. If you have to overpaint, then make sure that what you're overpainting is dry. It'll lift. What will happen is when you overpaint something that's wet, it just suddenly becomes, it just lifts it and you go back to your white. It's not ideal. Okay, so slightly more down the base here. And I'll just show you on the more plain design, which actually I think is very elegant. Again, load your brush up, but then twist it. That takes hold of some of the excess. And if you've got this veiner, you will have a guide where the indents are. That's where you paint these pimples. Thinning out as you go up. They're not uniform. Reloading. Probably each side will need a fresh. Don't be afraid to take some more of your petal dust and work that in. Twist your brush and then go again, and you can use there you have your freckles. Now the pistil's the last thing we need to colour, so we're just going to take some of the pink onto the top. If you're doing a fairly whitish flower, then you maybe won't want to bring as much pink from the top edge down. Just from the top edge, draw a little bit down the side. Doesn't need to be too strong. You can decide on your colour scheme. And then from the base up, we're going to use the green. So again, from the bottom edge up, we're going to use the green. The pistil has a nectar part at the top here. So that is achieved by using the fine paintbrush that we've made the freckles with, holding the brush sideways and drawing across the pinched area that you made earlier. Now, that didn't come out particularly brilliant, but I do run the risk now of this actually pulling off. So I'll just show you what I mean. Can you see? It just takes it off a little bit, so it's not ideal. You do need to wait for this to re-dry before you actually add more colour on. So that is your pistil. We finished off the green here, just the powder, and we'll let that dry, and I'll come back and show you how to assemble. Okay, I have all my components. I have 6 stamens, a pistil, 3 fat petals, and 3 narrow petals. These ones here actually need to be bent as a curve. So yeah, just put your finger and thumb and run your finger along so that you can curve. The next thing is to bend all the petals back on the wires. So clamp right at the top here, and then just use your finger and thumb to gently push that back. It's the best way to get a tight bend. If you use the tweezers and bend, they cause stress to the petal, but also they won't bend tight. So it's better to use just the tweezers as a clamp rather than a bending tool. So these are bent 90-degree angle, and we'll do the same with these. It just makes it much easier to assemble. Now, if you find when you put your petals on that they swing around, then you can actually put a little twisted tape on the ends of these petals just before you assemble. What I mean by that, I'll just show you on one, because I'm not going to do it on these. I think they'll be okay. But just take your tape, give it a good stretch to release the glue, and then you start down the bottom here and push up and tear off. So just up to 1 inch maximum on each stem will give you a bit more sticking power as you put your petals on and finish assembling the flower. So the first thing you need to do is actually put your little stamens onto your pistil. So they're going to be just a little way lower, a little bit lower, and they're going to tape where the pistil starts, not over the sugar. The first one we can start off straight away without worrying, because we can just do a twisted tape and push up. After that, just make sure that your tape is nice and stretched, and you just add in the stamens as you go. You don't need to be too concerned about where you're taping on this stem. It's probably better that you don't tape high up. We can always adjust that. We can go back up to the top in a little while. So add each stamen one at a time and just do a little twist to secure. So I'm just pinching between my finger and thumb. They will move around. Just try and keep them at a similar height. And if you want to put more than one in at a time, you can. So once you've added all your stamens in, you can see that my tape is not right up by the pistil. So I'm just going to stretch the tape and use my finger to guide it up to where the pistil starts, and then change the direction so it comes back down again. We'll just take that a few times to make sure they're in. You don't need to go down to the bottom because your petals are going in. Just neaten that off, and then just space your stamens around your pistil so they look like an umbrella spoke. Next, we can put the petals together. So if you find the 3 fattest petals, they're going to be your inner ones. So pick up your pistil center, and if you position, you can see now why you need this cup in here. Just pop that at the base where the pistil starts and bring the petal up to a 45-degree angle. Take your stretch tape and tape up here. Now the first one can go in nice and tight, but the others don't have to. A bit like the stamens, we can adjust the taping later on. So it's bent at a 90-degree angle just to make it easier to see where you're putting this. The second petal goes kind of divided, we're dividing this into 3, so just space them out a little bit. Bring the petal up so it closes a little bit and tape. Just 1 tape round will be fine. And now we can take the last fat petal and position that right at the bottom here. Bring the petal up into play and tape. So you'll notice now that we've got some wires showing. I'm not worried, because once I've got my last 3 petals in at the back, I'll be able to tape up and back down again. So now I'm going to find a gap and place one of my back petals, the narrow petals, in. These will come in a little bit lower, but still quite high up. And we're going to bring those so they close a little bit as well. Take your tape around just once, find the next gap, put the next narrow petal in behind. So come down just a fraction, carefully ease up your petal. If they're all horizontal, if you don't close them up, it just looks very open. And then our last one goes in again, right at the back there and up. I can see it's a little bit blurred, so I might just I'm going to reset the camera. Won't be a moment. Hello. There we go, we're back. Okay, so here now I'm just going to get the last one in. Check that I've got the petals positioned, 3 fat ones in the middle, 3 thin ones at the back. And if you just use your finger to ease and stretch the paste up to the top, that will hide all the wires. Then change the direction of your taping to come back down again. Just keep these straight. Try not to let the wires spiral around each other while you're doing this. So I just want to put just a little bit more tape at the bottom. Stretching it releases the glue, and you can just continue your taping. Keep a nice tight angle. When you get to the bottom, I only trim a little bit, trim it at an angle, it just looks neater. Hold on to the wires so they don't fly. And this little cut end here, if you just take a little bit of your tape to neaten that part off. And there you have your Stargazer Lily. So, like I said before, if you've got any questions, please feel free to get in touch, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye for now.